Hello, Dawn Moore, Allegiance Title Company. Today, my topic is backup contracts. I know I've addressed backup contracts before, but today I want to talk about the basics. First off, a backup contract is a contract. It is a written agreement obligating both the seller and buyer to sell and purchase a piece of property pursuant to its terms. The only difference between a backup contract and a primary contract is that a backup contract is subject to one additional contingency. That contingency being that the first contract terminates. If the first contract terminates during the term of the backup contract moves to primary position. A backup contract is binding only when both seller and buyer have agreed in writing to all of its terms and attaches the backup addendum. In this multiple offer market, some agents whose buyers lose out on an offer ask the listing agent to simply keep their offer as a backup. This does not make the seller bound to sell to that buyer on that other offer. Unless the seller signs a backup contract and agrees in writing to all terms and conditions, the seller is not bound to that offer. Additionally, if you have submitted an offer that terminates of its own terms, your offer may not even be effective when the first contract terminates, such that the seller doesn't have anything to accept. You must get your contract in writing with the seller. A backup contract may be on terms and conditions very unlike the primary contract. It may be on any terms the seller and buyer agree to in writing. Some agents are very surprised when backup offers come in at lower prices than the primary. But the buyer is entitled to make an offer at any level at which he's comfortable. Of course, the seller doesn't have to accept it. And in this multiple offer market, most times the backup offer is at a higher price than the primary contract. The reason being is the backup buyer wants to entice the seller to do anything in his power to terminate the first. However, the seller does have the right to agree to a contract at a lower price, and it may be because other terms are more favorable, such as a quicker close or no contingencies or no repair request. Once the backup contract is agreed to in writing by all parties, both parties are obligated to purchase pursuant to its terms. However, if the buyer buys an option period, the buyer will have the right to terminate the backup contract. The provisions of the backup addendum stretch the option period for the buyer through the whole period that the contract is in backup position, and then through the number of days that it specifies in the paragraph 23 of the contract once it becomes primary. For the buyer to have this right, the buyer must pay this option fee within 2 days of the effective date of the contract. And that means the effective date of the backup contract. If the buyer fails to pay for this right within this time period, the buyer has no option. Now, this option period, or this option fee, is due for the right to terminate. It is consideration to the seller for the right to terminate. The fact that the buyer never exercises this right is irrelevant. If the first contract closes such that the backup contract is no longer in effect, the buyer is not entitled to a refund of this option fee. This option fee has been paid for a right, not an exercise. I hope this clarifies many of the misunderstandings we have out there in this field about backup contracts. And please feel free to share this video with your colleagues to clarify any misunderstandings they may have. Allegiance Title wants to be your resource for results, and we wish you continued success. Thank you.